On today's episode, we're talking with Danica Nelson. She is one of my favorite Instagram content creators. She is a specialist in everything personal finance, travel, and she has a signature program called Liberty Leave. So if you are an adult looking to push pause and take your very own adult gap year, you need to listen to this episode where Danica talks about her experience going from the corporate world into entrepreneurship and planning her very own Liberty Leave and how she can help you in that process as well. Everything from the mental component to the nitty gritty of planning the details and making sure those finances are going to check out before, during, and after your very own Liberty Leave. Take a listen. Welcome to the Gap Year Podcast, where we explore the who, what, where, when, and why of gap years. It's real people sharing their stories, ideas, and experts diving deep into how you can make the right decisions in order to have a meaningful gap year. This is the place to be no matter where you are on your gap year journey. I'm Michelle Dittmer, your resident gap year expert. Let's jump right in. Welcome to the Gap Year Podcast. My name is Michelle Dittmer, and I am your host and Gap Year expert. Today on the show, we have the wonderful Danica Nelson here with us, and she's going to be talking to us all about Liberty Leaves and what that looks like. And we're really excited in this new chapter of what we're doing at CanGap, kind of exploring what a gap year looks like beyond the youth sector and moving into lifelong pauses because they can happen at any time. And we have no better expert in the world, Danica here, and she is going to share a little bit about who she is and tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days. I know you just came back to Canada, so maybe give us just a little wee snippet of who you are and what you're up to.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm really excited for this conversation. I am Danica Nelson. I am the founder of Liberty Leave, and Liberty Leave is kind of my take on a sabbatical or a career break. And I'll tell you a short story of kind of where the name came from and how I got to this place and in this space in the first place. So, in 2019, after working in the corporate space for a few years, and managing all of the side hustles and doing all of the things, I learned very quickly that I was burning out and also that I was kind of stuck on autopilot mode. I was no longer confident that what I was doing was what I actually wanted to do. And, more of, I've been doing this for a while. It works-ish. It's making the money. It's fine. So what I did is I decided to negotiate 6 months away from my job at the time. And I really wanted to use that opportunity to, of course, get the time and space to think about what I wanted next for my life and my career, but also to travel throughout Southeast Asia solo. And it was the experience of a lifetime. I spent some time in Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia with my suitcase and my backpack. And it was really a life-changing experience for me. And when I explained that process to people and kind of what I was doing, and when I was telling people that I was taking time off from work, it was very much like, well, are you taking a maternity leave? Are you taking a sick leave? And I'm like, no, I'm kind of just taking a liberty leave. I am taking this time to liberate myself from my current life, explore the world on my terms, and really just feed into myself and kind of give myself the time and space to listen to what I want next for my life. And that's kind of where my brand started. It started as a personal project, me just wanting to document the experience and kind of sharing it with people, to people then kind of catching on and saying, like, wait, you can take a career break as an adult. You can do that. How do you do that? How do you manage money to do that? And that's when my company, Liberty Leave, was born.
I love that. And I love that the learning and the self-growth that happens when you take that intentional pause. It can happen at any age and stage. And like you said, people are shocked that this is something that's available to them. And it's definitely not something that is reserved for a particular age group or a particular income bracket. If you're planning for it, there's lots of different ways that you can make this happen for you. And I think right now in 2026, when we're looking around and we hear these stories of burnout and we hear the stories of career dissatisfaction, and we also hear these pressures of the economic situation, like there's a lot going on in the world right now. And I know myself, I would benefit right now from a little bit of a liberty leave myself, and just taking that time to breathe and to refocus and regain that energy and excitement for life and for what comes next. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did.
Exactly. That is what I did. And I kind of came up with like the framework of how I took my Liberty Leave and how I guide others. And I call it like my 4P framework, which is pause. So actually taking the time to like slow down. Let's just get off of autopilot, and just step back for a minute. Then there's the planning portion, which is like, okay, what do we actually want to do on this break? Because for me, I love to travel. So as soon as I'm taking a Liberty Leave, I'm leaving the country. I'm heading right to the airport. But for some people, that can look like, okay, I want to just like plan to stay home. I want to, spend more time with my aging parents, etc. And then the third P is like the actual pursuit of it. So now it's here, now it's happening. How do I make sure that I don't burn myself out on this break? How do I make sure that like I don't try to be overproductive to this break to the point that I need a break from the break, you know? And then the last part of the framework is pivot, because what I find with a lot of people that I coach through this process is they go through their break and they realize, I actually am not fulfilled with my life anymore. And I was doing it because I was stuck on autopilot. I've had some time to reimagine what I want my life to look like. And now I'm going to pivot to make that happen. And for a lot of people, that is, turning to entrepreneurship or turning from like a very high intensity tech job to like a nonprofit sector, or at least finding time to like volunteer or do something that's not as high stakes and not as high pressure. So yeah, that's kind of the process that when I went through, and also that I walk people through as well. It's kind of like the whole framework of it.
I love that. And I think it's so important that we do take that time to actually pause and plan, because these aren't the types of experiences that come together. Just you will it into happening. You got to put that intention behind it, and we do that in the youth space. And parents can kind of wrap their head around that for their young person, that they need this support and they need this help. But really, whenever you're stepping out of your comfort zone, whenever you're heading into something that's unfamiliar to you, taking that pause, getting that plan in place, and working with somebody that can guide you along the way is so important. And I'm curious for you and for other people in that planning process, how far in advance are people planning their Liberty Leave? What does that look like?
Yeah, so for me, I took a year and a half. Like the idea popped into my mind a year and a half before I actually set off on my trip. And for me, it was, of course, the financial aspect of it, because not having an income for me 6 months, like obviously that's going to be very difficult. So just kind of figuring out, okay, what's my living situation going to be? Who's going to pay my mortgage? Can I rent out my place while I am abroad so that, I'm actually not having to pay for two places? So things like that. The finances was a huge part for me, and then also the for me the travel aspect of it. Like, what countries did I want to go to? What countries will my Canadian dollars stretch further so that I can actually enjoy my time away? So yeah, it took me in total about a year and a half, and it was I enjoy the process personally because I am a planner. I'm extremely type A. I love to kind of like over plan. But for others, like I think they really do benefit from like, let me just, outsource this. I'm already burnt out. I've already got a lot going on. This person is more experienced. They can kind of tell me what's good, what's not good, and kind of I can learn from their mistakes. So some people just need a few months. It really depends on where they are. And also, like, not everyone has the opportunity to have that plan in place. Um, not everyone has the opportunity to have like a big timeline like I did if they are at, a state of like emergency. For example, they
Mhm.
get laid off or they get extremely burnt out and they actually just need to take this time off immediately. So again, that can really help with working with like a professional who specializes in this space because we can make things happen for them very quickly and kind of help them fight through the noise and just like make decisions.
Yeah, I like that range too, because it's not one particular type of person in one particular life scenario. When people ask me about the youth side, they're like, who would benefit from taking a gap year? I said, well, everyone. And it looks different for every single person. So, in the Liberty Leave space, do you have a particular type of person that benefits most from it, or do you see a wide range as well?
I see a wide range. My target demographic is typically women who are burnt out. Age 25 to 45 is kind of like that sweet spot where they've been like, either trying to aggressively get their foot in the door of the corporate space or the workspace, or they've been climbing the corporate ladder and they're kind of tired of it. And people who are typically like overachievers, high achievers, more prone to burnout, which is literally who I am. So I serve people who check a lot of the boxes that I do.
Well, and then you can make it work because you know that the formula works because you are your own clientele, which
Exactly.
is just so helpful. And I think that like you are going to be able to really support them on that journey again, like you said, whether it's a year and a half in advance or kind of the oh no, I got to make this happen now, which is not the ideal situation, but it's a very real thing in 2026 for sure, for sure. So I'm curious when you talk about the plan, obviously for a lot of people, the thing that seems most out of reach is the financial piece. And saying, oh, I can't be without an income for 6 months or 3 months or a month or a year or whatever their time frame they're looking at, and they shut down because of that financial component. So, what do you think is the reality when it comes to that financial piece? And why do people just default to saying, no, that's not for me? I'm just going to completely shut down out of that.
Yeah, I think it's a fair response to be afraid of the money aspect of this when even considering a break, especially in a world where we have been conditioned to believe that, you have to work to be valuable. If you're not making money, you're a loser. Like, unfortunately, this world has really conditioned us to believe that, like, you need to work until your 60s. That's the only option. And that's just not the reality. There are, of course, like alternate ways that we can fund things like this. So for me, what I do, what I teach my clients is the same approach that I took myself, and I call it building my freedom formula. And my freedom formula, it's three prongs. It's how can I make more money? How can I save more money? And how can I better manage the money that I have right now? So, how can I make more money? That can look like side hustles. That can look like selling things in your house that you haven't touched in years. That can look like, maybe doing some freelancing or consulting on the side for things that you're already doing in your day job, things that you're skilled at. So, those are ways to kind of attract more money. And then in terms of saving money, it's like, okay, where can I cut expenses? For me, that looked like not going out with my friends every weekend downtown like I was doing before. Maybe instead of, hitting up really expensive restaurants, we're doing like cute little DIY picnics in the park and, finding fun ways that don't feel too restrictive, but are helpful to cutting expenses. Also doing things like a subscription audit. Do you need every single Netflix, Disney, Spotify? Do you need all of the things, or where are opportunities where we can cut money? So that's the second prong of it. And then the third is like, how can I better manage the money that I have right now? So that can look like if you have a savings account, are you keeping it in a checkings account that's earning 0% interest? Why are we doing that? We shouldn't be doing that. There are so many options available to us to be these days where we can at least earn, 2% interest on a high interest savings account, etc. We can put our money in like a GIC, for example, that can help us earn some money while we, work towards this plan. So that's kind of like that three-prong approach to figuring out ways that we can actually afford this. And then living expenses is kind of like one of the most expensive things in anyone's life. So for me, that looked like, okay, well, if I want to be abroad for 6 months or a year, can I just rent out my space for a little bit, maybe put my belongings in storage, have someone pay rent so I can pay my mortgage? There are very creative ways that we can figure this out financially, if we kind of sit down and are willing to truly crunch the numbers, if this is a very important goal for us to achieve.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like where there's a will, there's a way. And if you want to make it happen, you got to sit down, you got to do the work to make those numbers come out. So you're gonna not only be able to enjoy your time off without feeling that stress, but you're going to be able to re-engage in life afterwards in a comfortable way because this is, well, part of it is putting some of your life on pause. We also need to be living our lives leading up to that pause, living during that pause, and then resuming afterwards as well. And the financial component is a huge, huge part of that for sure.
It is. And I also want to always acknowledge that I recognize that being able to do something like this is a privilege, especially when you factor in expenses. Like if you have children, if you are supporting family members, I recognize that this is a privilege and it may not be accessible to everyone. But oftentimes there are ways that we can kind of figure out how to crunch the numbers to make it realistic.
Yeah, and I think that's really important for everyone to hear. And there's ways to bring those costs down when you're looking at the amount of time spent, or you're looking at what activities you're doing during that time, and how can you cost share, and all sorts of different ways. So if it is somebody's dream to travel the world on a ship for a year, your price tag is going to look different than for somebody who's looking for a month just to recharge and reset that battery locally. And I think it's really important to be realistic about where each of us are on that spectrum and what makes sense for us. And it might be that you are setting this goal for 5 years from now or 10 years from now, and just slowly working towards it, and knowing that life can throw us a curveball at any moment as well. And even if you have to change plans, having those funds set aside could be useful in some other way as well.
Yes, agreed.
Amazing. And so, what type of um, outcomes would you say do most people have when they take a Liberty leave? What are they saying at the end of their time? What are the reflections? What is kind of the looking backwards? Because looking forwards, we know it's scary, we know it's a lot of work, but what are the benefits when people are looking in the rear view mirror? What are they saying?
They are saying, why did I stay in this career that does not bring me joy for so long? Why did I kind of fall into this autopilot mode? And there's this concept I recently learned. It's called like the drift theory. And it's essentially allowing yourself to kind of drift through life and kind of just like, okay, I'll go with the flow, see what happens. People look back and they realize that they were not an active participant in their life and in their choices. And they now have the energy and that mental clarity to be inspired enough to make a change and to, choose things that they actively want to participate in. And again, that's often entrepreneurship, completely different industries, maybe something that makes significantly less money, but brings significantly more joy. It's oftentimes like a whole life shakeup.
Yeah. And I love that theory when I talk in the youth space, it's getting into the driver's seat of your life. Because as a young person, often your parents are in the driver's seat and you're in the passenger seat. And then that once you're an adult, then everything else becomes just going with the flow. I'm gonna just continue, don't shake it up, just do the status quo, And we're told to value stability, value be grateful you have a job. Be grateful you've got an income. Don't do anything that might jeopardize any of that. Just stay on the straight and narrow path, and you'll be safe and happy. And you should be grateful that that is where you're at. And sometimes that external voice saying I should be grateful kind of can cloud that. Well, am I actually enjoying my life, or am I just coasting through what has just been there for forever, or what has kind of become my norm? Is it truly bringing me joy? And being able to take that pause and being able to reevaluate is such a key piece. And I think one of the activities that I really enjoy doing every once in a while, and whenever I get a chance to pause, is really looking at personal values and seeing, well, am I still living in accordance with my personal values? Because sometimes we just don't realize it, but we're slowly 1 degree off course, and as the years pass, it gets farther and farther from that core alignment, I guess.
1,000%. I completely agree with that. And I especially agree with what you said earlier about, sometimes we are taught that we're just supposed to be grateful for even having a job. I'm a child of immigrants, Jamaican immigrants to be specific, and we are often taught that when you get a job, you stay there, you don't make up noise, you put your head down, you collect your pension, you do all the good things, and then you get to enjoy life in your 60s. And I believed that for the longest time. And I think that's why I, went above and beyond to try to climb the corporate ladder as quickly as possible and, try to dabble in all the things, do all of the speaking opportunities and things like that. And then I realized, why am I doing this? Like, whose dream is this? Because my dream is actually a life where I can wake up without an alarm. um, and it is a life where like I actually feel fulfilled by my work and not necessarily just things that are falling on my desk and things that are being assigned to me. And my Liberty Leave allowed me to kind of envision what that life would look like. And that's kind of how I shifted from working corporate 9 to 5 into entrepreneurship at the moment because I actually had that time and space to design what I want the process to look like for me.
I love that story. I love it.
Thank you.
And yeah, I think sometimes that noise from the outside gets so loud that we don't have space to listen to that inner voice and figure out what is it actually that motivates us and makes us feel alive. And lots of people, we've been doing a lot of research in this mini retirement career break space, and a lot of things happen in people's lives. And when a lot of folks hold off until that retirement 60, 65, they have something traumatic happen in their life that disrupts what they've been waiting their whole life for.
Yes.
And then all of these dreams, all of these savings, all of these plans are no longer possible. And so a lot of people in this space are saying, well, I want to make sure that I can have these experiences in my life because I don't know what the future holds. And so I want to be able to do that throughout my life. And things like Liberty Leaves, adult gap years, sabbaticals, mini retirements, whatever name you want to associate with it. It really is a powerful way to make sure that you are not going to miss out on those things that you're really hoping for.
I completely agree. I'll never forget, I was on my first Liberty Leave in 2020. I was at a food market in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I got to talking to someone who was grabbing pad thai from the same, spot that I was. And I told him like a bit about like what I was doing. He's like, "Oh yeah, why are you alone? Why don't you have friends with you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just kind of here for a couple months." Taking this kind of gap period in my career because I've always wanted to travel. I actually always wanted to do a gap year as like a after university, but it's just not something that was affordable to me at that time, so I didn't get to do it. So I was telling him, I wanted to travel while I was able-bodied and able to kind of do these things. And he started tearing up. And I was like, what's going on? Like, why is this making you so sad? And he's like, his father, who recently turned 65, had wanted to do what I was doing, like, take maybe a year or so to travel the world. And he had just retired. He had just saved the money to be able to do it. But unfortunately, he got ill and he passed away and he wasn't able to do it. So the guy that I met, like, he was sharing with me, like, I don't know you, but I'm really proud of you for making it happen because a lot of people are not actually able to fulfill this dream because, like you said, life is unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. And that was really validating to me in that moment that, like, this is important for me to be doing. And it's important for me to be doing the work to help others, embark on these types of journeys because we really never know what the future holds.
100%. And I think it's really interesting when we look from the other side of the desk. If we look at the HR side of things, we know a lot of young people are not having children anymore. And so that maternity leave, where some people get a different kind of break, is not being used in that way. We know that retention of staff is a real challenge with lots of burnout, lots of mental health issues, lots of folks not having that same loyalty to companies, and people looking to feel fulfilled in the work that they're doing as a higher value than previous generations. And I think when we look at the HR side of things, there's so much to be said for organizations to encourage and endorse and support this because you're going to have employees that are going to come back and be inspired and excited about their work again, be recharged. Maybe they're going to upskill or they're going to bring a different perspective back to the workplace after. And so I think when we look at both sides of the equation, it makes a lot of sense in today's day and age.
100%. Completely agree.
Yeah. And you may risk losing an employee here or there, but then you're making more space for the right type of employee to come and be aligned and to be sitting in the right seat of the bus if you are in the corporate space. I've never heard that analogy many times.
Yes.
There we go. All right, so the right seat on the right bus makes a lot of sense, and I think also having that GPS there to help guide you is really important, and that's really your role as part of the Liberty Leave. And one of my favorite things about your program is that it's not just the warm and fuzzy personal transformation life coach element to it. It actually has those tangible steps when we're talking about the nuts and bolts and the structure and the things that need to happen in order to make this a realistic experience for people. And I just think that that is such a brilliant combination where, yes, we're getting this reflection piece of it, but we're also getting those concrete skills that are going to actually allow something like this to come to fruition. So I just wanted to give you some shout outs and some kudos for the way that you've structured that program because I think that that is a very unique way for people to feel and be supported on their Liberty Leave.
Thank you. Yeah, to your point, I think oftentimes when people think about career breaks and sabbaticals, I think, oh, it's just going to be a walk in the park. It's all butterflies and rainbows. It is not all butterflies and rainbows. It can be really tough. And the way that I structure my program, like before we jump into like what are we actually going to do on the break, it's focusing on mindset because a lot of people don't believe that they deserve rest in the first place. A lot of people feel guilty at the fact they even, decided to work with me because they're like, am I allowed to even do this? Like, am I allowed to take a break? So, yeah, mindset is really important. And of course, we talked about the practical financial aspect of this because unfortunately, like if I'm already working with burnt out people, I do not want them to go into their break thinking that everything's great. And then they come back to like $20,000 of debt, which just makes them more burnt out because now they have to work and try to pay that off. Like that's why we really try to find ways that are not going to, make us take on extra debt to be able to make this happen. And another really important part of this whole process is navigating difficult conversations with people around you because not everyone is going to support you on this journey. a lot of people have really been sold hard that belief that we have to be productive to be worthy in this world. And when you start communicating a break to others, those conversations can be really difficult. So, yeah, to your point, like having like scripts and practical takeaways and being able to, prepare for those conversations, get your scripts in order so that you can stand your ground and not let anyone talk you out of it or not let anyone make you feel bad about it. Really, really important.
Yeah, and I can tell you that even just a change in career, I was once upon a time a high school teacher. And when I told people I was stepping away from the classroom, they said, "Well, you've got a pension, you've got summers off, you've got stable guaranteed job. Like what is going through your brain? That makes no sense." And it took a lot of courage and self-awareness to be able to say, no, this is the right step for me. And being able to practice that would have been really helpful to be aware that these things are going to come across your path and that it's not a sign that you've made a wrong decision. It's that you have made the right decision for you and you need to own up to it and proceed with caution, but still proceed.
1,000%. Yeah. We oftentimes need to be coached to not allow people to project their limiting beliefs onto you. And, that takes practice, that takes coaching, and it takes courage.
Yeah, yeah, our skin gets thicker and our shoulders get broader.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, if you could leave folks with a piece of advice as we wrap up our conversation here, what would that be?
My piece of advice would be we are not taking a liberty leave or a career break or sabbatical, etc. We are not doing that so that we can relax and then bounce back harder or come back stronger. When we do that, we get burnt out again and we need another break. Ask me how I know that exact thing happened to me. My first break, I took the 6 months off. It was great. I felt relaxed. I felt more aligned with my life. I ended up in a new career and I worked really hard in that career and I got really burnt out in that career to a point that I actually ended up having to take 8 weeks in a stress leave or short-term disability, and then eventually eventually ended up getting laid off from that position. And I'm very grateful that I was laid off from that position because it kind of forced me back into break mode and to like really reminding myself why I took the first break in the first place. But really, my takeaway for people would be the goal of your Liberty Leave is to not take a step back so that you can take 10 steps forward in your career and in your hyper productivity once you get back to your career. The goal is to become more aligned with yourself and your decisions and your pace so that you do not return to a space of burnout and do not need a break so shortly after. This is counterproductive. We're not doing that.
I love that you're bringing that lived experience to everything that you do. So I really appreciate this conversation with you today. And Danica, if people wanted to follow up with you, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So you can check out my website, libertyleave.com. That's where you'll find everything that I stand for, all of my work, my press features, and also where you can get more information on my coaching program, where I help walk people through the process of taking a liberty leave. You can also follow me on social media at Danica S. Nelson. I'm on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all of the platforms. And I really do enjoy kind of creating content that, of course, encourages people to feel confident in taking these kind of breaks, but also helps people with their finances and really kind of figure out how can we get to a place where we feel comfortable taking these types of breaks in the first place? Because really it does start with good financial habits and good financial hygiene.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And we will be hearing more from you later on.
Thank you
Take
for
care.
having me.
Bye.
Bye.